Hello there, my name's Jim, and today on this video I'm going to be talking about chords for beginners. So if you haven't played the guitar before and you'd like to learn a few songs to sing along with, or perhaps play along with friends, then this video should be really helpful. On the video we're going to be looking at 4 particular chords which are all kind of related. The chords are called C, F, G7 and A minor 7. Okay, now as I mentioned, the chords are related, they're musically related, and they're kind of similar shapes as well, which should make things easier for our fingers and should help the learning process be quicker and smoother. Okay, before we actually look specifically at those chords, let's just talk a little bit about the guitar, about the layout. We have 6 strings. The strings are called E, A, D, G, B and E again. The E here, which is the thick string, we call that low E because it sounds the lowest. And the E at the bottom, we call that high E because it sounds the highest. A little phrase that helps us to remember the names of the strings is elephants and donkeys grow big ears. E, A, D, G, B, E. Okay. Another little point to remember with the guitar, we've got the metal strips here. They're called frets. They're where the different notes live. And obviously when we're playing chords, we need to be okay at pressing down some of these notes to make our chord happen. Okay. When we're pressing on a fret, we don't press right on the wire. You put your finger just behind to get a nice clear note. And on the subject of pressing the notes, our fingers, we usually refer to them in numbers, finger 1, 2, 3, 4. So for instance, I may say press string 1 at fret 1 with finger 1, and it would look like that. Press fret 2 at fret 1 with finger 1, and so on. Okay. Another thing to be aware of is holding the plectrum. Plectrum's really good when we want to strum chords, get a nice bright sound. So the way to hold a plectrum is to crook your finger like that. Sit the plectrum on top so that the point of the plectrum extends beyond just above where your fingernail is, and then you rest your thumb on top to hold it secure, and then you're good to go with the strumming. Okay, so I guess the next thing now is let's look at those 4 chords that we're going to use. They're C, F, G7 and A minor 7. Okay. Before we start these chords, let me just mention a couple of important points. When you start trying to play these chords and you start practicing, you may find your fingertips get a little bit raw, a little bit irritated. If that happens, then I suggest just take a break. Eventually, your fingers will get more accustomed to the strings, and it won't hurt at all. But to start with, it may be a little bit irritating for your fingers. If that happens after a while, then just take a break, okay, with the practice. And on the point of practicing chords, you know, these are new kind of shapes to your fingers, so it does require a little bit of practice. Often is a good thing. Don't expect a miracle to happen overnight, but if you practice fairly often, then I can assure you that your fingers will get used to these chord shapes. Okay, so here we go. Our first chord shape then is called C. And let me just tell you where we put our fingers. Finger 1 for a C chord is going to go to string 2 at fret 1. Finger 2 is going to live on string 4 at fret 2, and finger 3 goes on string 5 at fret 3. Okay, so place your fingers there carefully and then try to strum the chord. Okay, If you find the chord doesn't sound quite right, you're not getting all the notes, then a useful thing is just to pluck each note separately, each string. And if perhaps your finger's leaning over and stopping a string and it's not working quite right, then that should kind of point out to you which finger needs to be pressing correctly or it's not working properly. So an essential thing with all of these chords is that you make sure you stand your fingers up so that they don't lean over onto the next string and stop the next string from ringing. Okay, so do stand your fingers up. When you've got the C shape, then have a practice at strumming it. So hopefully with a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, you should be okay with playing that C chord. Let's have a look at our second shape. This one is called F. It's actually, I call it easy F because there is another way of playing an F that's a bit more difficult. We're going to do easy F to begin with, which sounds fine and it'll serve our purposes. So for the easy F, it is kind of similar to a C shape. All we need to do, we leave finger 1 where it was for the C, and then finger 2 moves down onto string 3 at fret 2, and finger 3 moves onto string 4 at fret 3, like that. So if you compare it to the C shape, all that's happened is these two fingers have dropped down one string, and we've got this diagonal shape on each consecutive string. That gives us our easy F chord. Again, you could check each separate note to make sure it's ringing clearly and then strum it. Now when I'm strumming, I'm actually going to start to strum on string 5. You could actually strum all the strings, it would still sound okay. So that was easy F. Our next chord is G7. Now I'm going to relate that to our C shape again. There's our C shape. To turn that into a G7 chord, it's kind of like a spaced out C chord really. We move our fingers further apart. So finger 1 is going to string 1 at fret 1. Finger 2 is going to string 5 at fret 2, and finger 3 is going to string 6 at fret 3. So compared to our C shape, it was kind of, we just move our fingers outwards. There's our G7. Once again, I suggest you pluck each string separately to make sure they're all working clearly, and then try strumming them. Little points about the G7. If we find that tough to begin with, stretching our fingers to get that shape happening, we can make life a little bit easier by playing an easy G7, which it would be just finger 1 at fret 1 on string 1. And if you just strum the bottom 4 strings, then we're getting all the notes of a G7 chord. That will be a good chord to play just to begin with if you find the G7 a bit tough. Another little point, if you were to play fret 3 on string 1 on its own, that would be an easy G. And a proper G chord would be, the bottom part of the proper G chord would be the same as the the full G7. So those two fingers would be on string 5, fret 2, string 6, fret 3, your little finger on string 1, fret 3. That would be a full G chord. Okay, so the easy G, full G. Okay. Final chord then is going to be A minor 7, and you might be pleased to hear this is probably the easiest one, because all we need to do, we take our C shape and remove the third finger, and then if we start to strum at fret 5, that would give us A minor 7. Okay, so I am pressing string 4, fret 2 and string 2, fret 1 as I would for the C chord, but as mentioned, I've took finger 3 off. Now I've got an A minor 7 chord. So once again, same process, just check each string, then strum them. Okay, so there are 4 chords: C, F, G7 and A minor 7. I guess now would be a good time for us to look at ways to become better at changing those chords, because if we're going to play songs we need to be able to change the chords smoothly. So that's what we're going to do next.